How is forensic evidence manipulated in a post-truth world? Ladies and gentlemen, in an era where the truth has become negotiable, forensic evidence, once the gold standard of objectivity, is increasingly vulnerable to manipulation. The post-truth world does not simply reject facts. It reshapes them, reinterprets them, and sometimes reinvents them. And nowhere is this more dangerous than in the realm of criminal justice, where lives hang in the balance. Forensic science is supposed to be immune to ideology and bias. Its power lies in its promise of precision and neutrality, DNA matches, ballistic reports, digital trails. But what happens when these scientific tools fall into the wrong hands, when narratives, not facts, drive decisions? We must confront the reality that forensic evidence, like any other kind of evidence, can be curated, distorted, or concealed to suit political agendas, institutional protections, or societal myths. In conflict zones, evidence is often collected by those with stakes in the outcome. In politically sensitive cases, investigators might overlook or underreport inconvenient findings. Sometimes entire databases disappear, photos are doctored, timestamps changed, or experts discredited. The truth is not just buried, it's weaponized. As the public, we are taught to believe in the cold, hard objectivity of science. Yet the institutions interpreting this science are not always neutral. They are subject to pressure that occurs during the selection and framing of forensic selection of forensic evidence. Investigators may choose to highlight certain data while downplaying or ignoring other elements that complicate the narrative. In some cases, investigators may already have a suspect in mind and unconsciously interpret evidence in a way that supports their assumptions, a phenomenon known as a confirmation bias. Even the choice of what tests to run or what evidence to collect can be influenced by preconceived This kind of manipulation is not always malicious, but its impact is just as dangerous. It can lead to wrongful convictions or the suppression of inconvenient truths. Moreover, forensic labs themselves are not always independent. In many countries, forensic analysts are directly employed by police departments or state agencies. This institutional entanglement raises serious concerns. When a lab's funding or leadership is tied to a law enforcement body, there is an implicit pressure, spoken or unspoken, to produce findings that support prosecutions rather than challenge them. In such environments, even well-intentioned analysts may feel incentivized to interpret ambiguous results in ways that strengthen the state's case, rather than pursue an unvarnished version of the truth. Additionally, the interpretation of forensic data often requires a degree of subjective judgment. Contrary to popular belief, forensic science is not always black and white. For instance, in the analysis of fingerprints, fibers, or bite marks, experts may disagree on whether a match is conclusive. What one analyst deems a strong correlation, another may regard as coincidental or inconclusive. These grey areas leave room for manipulation, especially when expert witnesses are selected based on their willingness to deliver a desired opinion. The courtroom becomes less about revealing truth and more about whose version of the evidence can be made more convincing. All of this points to a sobering reality. Forensic evidence is not inherently neutral. It gains meaning through human interaction, and those interactions can be flawed, biased, or even corrupt. The perception of objectivity creates a dangerous illusion, one that can blind both the public and the judiciary to the potential for error or abuse. As long as this illusion persists, the manipulation of forensic evidence will remain a potent weapon in the hands of those willing to use science not as a method of discovery, but as a tool of control. We live in what many describe as a post-truth era, a time when objective facts are often less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion, ideology, or personal belief. In this environment, the authority of science itself has become a target of skepticism. Institutions once held as impartial arbiters of truth are now viewed by many as politically compromised, elitist, or unreliable. Forensic science, as a branch of scientific inquiry deeply embedded in the legal system, has not escaped this growing mistrust. Rather than being accepted as impartial proof, forensic evidence is increasingly questioned, reframed, or disregarded by those who prefer alternative narratives. In such a landscape, the presentation of evidence, no matter how well verified, is often met with immediate suspicion. People do not only ask what the evidence says, but who is presenting it, why they're presenting it, and what agenda they may see. These questions, while sometimes justified, are also easily weaponized. Bad actors, from political leaders to conspiracy theorists, can exploit this doubt to undermine legitimate investigations. If inconvenient forensic results emerge, it is now common to see counterclaims that the science was a fake, the experts were biased, or the process was rigged. The internet and social media have amplified this trend by creating echo chambers that reinforce personal beliefs and filter out conflicting information. In the context of forensic science, this means that people are more likely to believe evidence that aligns with their views and dismiss findings that challenge them. A DNA match, once considered a near unbreakable link between suspect and crime, can now be dismissed online as a government plant or deep state fabrication. As people become more resistant to scientific consensus, the very notion of verifiable truth begins to erode. When everything is up for debate, even the most carefully gathered forensic evidence can be rendered meaningless in the court of public opinion. This environment creates a unique danger for justice systems. Courts rely on the presumption that scientific evidence, when properly collected and analysed, will guide juries and judges toward fair conclusions. But if jurors enter a courtroom already doubting the reliability of forensics, because of something they read online or heard from a political figure, the foundational role of evidence is weakened. This is especially problematic in high-profile or politically charged cases where misinformation is widespread and rapidly consumed. In these situations, forensic findings are no longer seen as anchors of truth, but as one version of reality among many competing narratives. Compounding the issue is the strategic manipulation of public trust in science. Political operatives and legal strategists increasingly recognize that casting doubt on forensic evidence can be an effective tool for discrediting investigations. By framing scientific processes as partisan or flawed, they shift the focus away from facts and toward motives. This allows them to reframe forensic reports as ideological documents rather than neutral analyses. In some cases, governments have even suppressed or rewritten forensic findings that threaten their legitimacy, choosing narrative control over truth and spectacle over accountability. Ultimately, the post-truth era presents a paradox. We have more access to scientific knowledge than ever before, yet we are more prone to doubt and disbelieve it. Forensic science, once a trusted path to clarity and justice, now operates within a cultural context that is increasingly hostile to the very idea of objective fact. Without trust in the scientific process, the justice system's ability to determine guilt or innocence is severely compromised. This isn't simply controls both the crime and the investigation. The possibility of accountability nearly vanishes. The legal system becomes a theatre, the evidence becomes a script, and the outcome becomes a performance designed to maintain power rather than uncover truth. The implications are not limited to one country or regime, they are global. From autocratic governments to democracies under strain, the integrity of forensic science is increasingly at risk wherever political interest outweighs public transparency. The reliability of forensic evidence begins with how and by whom it is collected. While forensic science is grounded in methodologies that aim to be objective, the human agents responsible for gathering evidence are not immune to bias. In politically charged or conflict-ridden context, the actors who control access to crime scenes, evidence, and witness statements often have a direct stake in the outcome. This fundamental conflict of interest threatens the integrity of the entire investigative process, turning what should be a neutral operation into a potentially compromised and biased one. In many state-controlled investigations, particularly in authoritarian regimes or militarized zones, the very institutions accused of misconduct are the same ones responsible for collecting forensic data. For example, if police forces are implicated in violence against civilians, it is often the same police departments or related state agencies that are tasked rinsing the scene, that inherently be seen. This inherently biased setup raises significant ethical and procedural concerns. When the accused becomes the investigator, the process is unlikely to produce impartial findings. Key evidence may be overlooked, contaminated, or destroyed entirely, with no external oversight to hold the collectors accountable. Even in democratic settings, bias can seep into evidence collection through the discretionary decisions made by investigators. Which witnesses are interviewed, what locations are searched, and what items are logged as relevant. All of these are decisions influenced by assumptions, institutional culture, and case narratives. If an investigator has already formed a theory of guilt, whether consciously or subconsciously, they may prioritize evidence that supports that theory while disregarding conflicting information. This selective focus creates an unbalanced picture of events and allows bias to masquerade as scientific certainty. Another layer of complexity emerges in international investigations, and thusly those involving war crimes, state violence, or genocide. In these scenarios, local governments may deny access to independent forensic teams or attempt to discredit their findings. Alternatively, they may offer limited access under strict conditions, ensuring that only their version of events is documented. In some cases, they may present curated evidence they've already collected, framing it as transparent cooperation, when in fact, the manipulation of evidence collection by biased actors not only compromises individual cases, it also undermines public faith in the justice system as a whole. When people see that evidence is being handled by those with vested interests, they lose confidence in the fairness and validity of legal outcomes. Over time, this erodes the very idea that forensic science can be trusted. In a post-truth world, where facts are already fragile, biased evidence collection accelerates the breakdown of consensus around what is real, what is provable, and what is just. In the digital age, forensic investigations increasingly depend on electronic data, emails, phone records, surveillance footage, GPS logs, metadata, and even social media activity. Digital forensics has become one of the most powerful tools for reconstructing timelines, verifying alibis, and tracing criminal behavior. Unlike physical evidence, which degrades over time, digital traces can provide minute-by-minute accounts of movements, communications, and actions. However, this digital sophistication comes with a new set of vulnerabilities. As forensic science evolves, so do the methods for tampering with it, making digital forensics both a breakthrough and a battleground. Unlike physical fingerprints or blood samples, digital files can be duplicated, modified, or deleted without a trace, especially by those with technical knowledge or privileged access. For example, someone with administrator-level clearance to a server can alter logs to erase incriminating activity or plant false data. Selectively wiped or backdated to distort timelines. Even metadata, which is often relied upon to verify the authenticity of files, can be manipulated using commonly available tools. This makes digital evidence both critical and precarious. What's more, digital forensics often lacks a single, standardized protocol across jurisdictions. Different countries, and even different agencies within the same country, use different software, criteria, and methods for extraction and analysis. This inconsistency opens the door for exploitation. Forensic experts may reach different conclusions about the same piece of digital evidence depending on the tools they use or the assumptions they make during analysis. In legal contexts, these discrepancies can be exploited by defense or prosecution teams to cast doubt on the reliability of the findings or the credibility of the analysts involved. State-sponsored actors and intelligence agencies are also capable of sophisticated digital manipulation. These entities possess advanced cyber capabilities and can create convincing digital forgeries that are extremely difficult to detect. In some cases, fabricated emails, deepfake videos, or altered phone records have been introduced into evidence, either to frame an individual or to create plausible deniability. Once such forged material enters public discourse or legal proceedings, the damage is often irreversible, regardless of whether the forgery is later uncovered. The appearance of guilt can be enough to sway opinion or justify punitive action. In politically sensitive investigations, the digital chain of custody is particularly vulnerable. A single break in that chain, such as a device being out of secure control for a period of time, can call the entire body of evidence into question. Prosecutors and defense lawyers alike may use this to their advantage, arguing that the integrity of the data cannot be guaranteed. Worse still, some authorities may deliberately allow such breaches to occur, creating enough doubt to dismiss damning evidence, while maintaining a facade of legal process. This undermines both accountability and transparency, turning technology into a tool of obfuscation rather than revelation. The broader danger is that the very power of digital forensics becomes its Achilles heel. Because it's capable of painting such a detailed picture, manipulated digital evidence can be extremely persuasive, especially when accompanied by the veneer of scientific rigor. In a post-truth world where trust in institutions is already fragile, the misuse of digital forensics can have devastating consequences. It can legitimize false narratives, criminalize innocent individuals, or shield the guilty, all while maintaining the illusion of technological objectivity. Without rigorous safeguards, independent oversight, and public awareness, digital forensics may become less a pathway to truth and more a means of rewriting it. In closing, we must remember that the promise of forensic science was never simply about technology. It was about truth. It was about building a system where evidence speaks louder than speculation, and where facts rise above fear, politics, and power. But in this post-truth world, where narratives compete with reality and agendas reshape what is seen and said, even the most scientific processes are not immune to distortion. We cannot afford to be passive observers. When forensic evidence is manipulated, whether by omission, bias, or outright fabrication, failure is not just a failure of procedure, it is a failure of justice. It means that the innocent may be punished, the guilty may walk free, and the public may be fed a version of events that suits only the powerful. To protect the integrity of justice, we must protect the integrity of forensic science. That means demanding transparency, insisting on independent investigations, supporting ethical whistleblowers, and never mistaking authority for truth. Because in a world where facts can be twisted and truth can be bought, the greatest defense we have left is an informed, vigilant, and courageous society. Let us not surrender that responsibility. Let us not allow silence or cynicism to become complicity. For in the end, the question is not only how forensic evidence is manipulated, but whether we will have the courage to stop it. Thank you.